Welcome back to another Q&A with the IBFP. So let's just get into it. This is part one of Q&A with the IBFP. So we're just going to start breaking it down question by question. And so the first one we're going to get through is Jose M. Jose M states, why are Errol Spence fans so emotional? That will just read the first part of that question. As far as Errol Spence fans being emotional, I'm not exactly sure why. But I will tell you this about Errol Spence fans. I get a lot of criticism for Errol Spence fans. Every time I mention or say anything about Errol Spence, people say, you're not fair to Errol Spence, and I'm just being honest and unbiased. And so giving an honest and unbiased analysis about a fighter, you're going to get criticism. You're going to get guys who are emotionally charged because they're fans and they cannot see things about Errol Spence Jr. objectively. If you notice, they say, oh, you hate Errol Spence. And I actually like Errol Spence Jr. I think he's a very talented fighter. He's a very entertaining fighter. I respect Errol Spence Jr. The thing about Errol Spence Jr. that I have a problem with is him not wanting to fight the best, but stating that he wants to fight the best and also claiming that he is the best. You can't make those claims unless you're willing to step in there and fight the best. When it comes to Terrence Crawford, everything's about business and money. But when it comes to Sean Porter and Keith Thurman, it's about let's just make the fight at any cost. You see the two sides of Errol Spence, and I don't like that. He needs to, in his own words, keep that same energy when it comes to Terrence Bud Crawford. But let's keep it going. D. Jefferson is the next question. D. Jefferson says, how could any moron say that AJ, the number one heavyweight, is an easy fight for Oslander Usyk? Because that's I'll leave that word out. Interesting statement. And then how can this not be a clear cherry pick if AJ and Hearn go to fight Usyk after Takam? Now again, if AJ and Hearn go after Usyk. So first of all, D, this is breaking news, is that, Oslander Usyk has tore his bicep, is from what I'm hearing, and that, he will not be fighting Carlos Takam. But if he is, and even if he's not, if he's prepared for AJ at the end of the year, regardless of the situation, it's not a cherry pick. And let me explain to you why. Because the WBO would mandate that as a fight would make him be the number one rated mandatory for Anthony Joshua immediately. That's not Hearn and AJ picking that. That's the WBO making that decision. Secondly, it still couldn't be a cherry pick because Usyk, unlike, Mikey and Spence, Usyk is only moving up one division. Usyk has a skill set that can translate multiple divisions. And Usyk himself as well, was undisputed champion at cruiserweight. And so his accomplishments, his skill level, and, and the fact that the WBO is mandating that basically tells you that there's no way this could be a cherry pick. How can you cherry pick an elite level fighter? How can you cherry pick a fighter who is undisputed? That makes no sense. And therefore, D, your question just doesn't hold water. But let's keep going. Emmanuel Moreno says, IBFP, if Canelo beats Demetrius Andre and Callum Smith, will that make Canelo the best fighter in Mexican history? That's a very, very hard question to answer, but I will tell you this. Canelo Alvarez, if he beats these type of fighter, if he beats Demetrius Andre and Callum Smith, the fact that he'd go undisputed and then move up to a higher weight class, take another belt from a guy who won the World Boxing Super Series, he'd definitely have a case for being the best fighter in Mexican history. Canelo Alvarez is already on the list of top 5 best fighters in Mexican history right now. And, adding those accomplishments to his resume, it very well could catapult him. But let's keep it going. John Hawthorne states, why do you think these pound-for-pound lists keeps placing Triple G or honestly even Spence over Naoya Inoue? He's pretty much done exactly what Loma has, minus beating Rigo. Now, what I will say is Triple G, he's been a unified champion at middleweight. Triple G, had very close fights with Canelo, probably gave Canelo the best fights outside of Floyd Mayweather that he's ever had in his career. So Triple G is an accomplished fighter. As far as Spence, he's only won the belt in one division off of a broken fighter and then beat a small Mikey. So I don't feel like Spence should even be mentioned. I can see Triple G in an argument for it, but Inoue is a very, very special fighter. You're absolutely right, John. But let's keep it moving. Lemon 26 says, who do you think Canelo is most likely to fight next? And do you think Triple G can still beat Canelo if they have a trilogy? I think that's very interesting. I think Triple G has a chance. And the reason why I think Triple G has a chance is because of his power and his relentless jab. Triple G can come at Canelo with a relentless jab. He has an elite level power. And, if Triple G keeps coming forward on Canelo, for Triple G to beat Canelo, especially at a little bit older of an age, Triple G has to risk getting knocked out. And I don't think that that's what Triple G wanted to do, because if you notice the first two fights, Triple G was unwilling to sacrifice his body to Canelo Alvarez's shots, to go for the knockout, because he felt Canelo's power. So if Triple G goes for the knockout against Canelo, he could get knocked out, but that's his only chance at victory. Just one man's opinion. OG says, apart from Wilder, Fury, and White, who are the decent opponents for AJ to fight? Oslander Usyk is a very good opponent, but outside of that, and outside of those three, I would say, I like Adam Kownacki. I think Adam Kownacki is a very, very interesting fighter. I think he's a very good fighter, but the fact that these guys on the PBC are aligned and not willing to fight Anthony Joshua is going to make it harder, and that means you're going to have to search for better and more credible opponents from all around the world. Matchroom Boxing has recently signed a Chinese fighter who's undefeated, who's very big, and so that would be a big showdown, but he doesn't come with, the resume that you look for in a top fighter. But let's keep going. Round 105 says, yo big brother, came to your channel because I got sick of ego being biased, especially after the Canelo Jacobs fight. Anyway, man, simple question: who is your favorite fighter of all time? First of all, round 105, we call him biased ego on this channel because he's completely biased. He promotes a narrative, and he's for PBC, and he promotes that narrative rather than being a boxing fan or a purist. But I appreciate the compliment, and thanks for subscribing. Also, as well, as far as my favorite fighter of all time, there's so many great fighters of all time. There's Muhammad Ali, you have Smoking Joe Frazier, you have Roberto Duran, you have Chavez Sr., you have so many top level fighters. You even have Floyd Mayweather, you have Pernell Whitaker, you have so many great elite level type fighters throughout the course of history that it would be hard for me to just pick one. But I do love boxing, and I love all fighters. Crazy D3 says, if Billy Joe Saunders wins the WBO 168-pound belt in a few weeks' time, should Canelo consider him as a possible next opponent? I think he should. I think that'll be an interesting opponent for Canelo. And, as long as Billy Joe Saunders is able to draw a crowd in the UK, a big sizable one, and has a belt at 168, I think it's just another great opportunity for Canelo Alvarez. But let's keep it going. And the next one comes from Leon 1624. He said, why do dumb people think Canelo versus Jacobs was a draw? And, typically it's because these people are typically pushing a narrative. I don't think that it was a huge blowout. I thought it was a little bit closer than what most people said, but I still think Canelo clearly won. I don't think it was a draw. I don't think it was, this could have been a draw. I think Canelo clearly did enough. I think he landed the cleaner, harder shots. I think his work rate was much higher. The CompuBox stats shows that. And so anybody that's saying that it's a draw is trying to save face, trying to push a narrative, or even simply trying to discredit Saul Canelo Alvarez. But let's keep going. Rudy Morales says, will we ever see Wilder versus Joshua? I believe we will, but I think we will see it at the wrong time. We'll see it at the time when Deontay Wilder has already taken a loss from a lower tier type of fighter, had to struggle and get his belt back, and then come see Joshua. And Joshua's only going to keep improving. So I think we will see it, but I think the fight has been ruined by Showtime. But let's keep it going. And the next one, Emmanuel Moreno has another question. He basically says, IBFP, I was watching after the fight show on ESPN Deportes, and it seems like Canelo gets no love from Juan Manuel Marquez and a lot of his own countrymen. Why is that? And I'll say this simply is because, when you're a superstar in your country, when people love you and applaud you for the job you're doing, sometimes it's your own countrymen that hate on you the most. Canelo Alvarez has accomplished a lot. He's done a lot. And I think he deserves that love. Look at Anthony Joshua and Lennox Lewis. And I understand that Lennox Lewis is UK and Canadian, but he throws a lot of shade at AJ. So you're going to get that. Carl Froch throws a lot of shade at AJ. So these guys ignore facts and just throw shade at AJ, and you wonder why. It's because he's getting the love that they wish they were. But let's keep it going. He also says they were saying things like Canelo underperformed offensively, but don't realize that he was in there with a huge oversized middleweight champion with skills. It seems like Canelo gets love from us Mexican Americans. I just wanted to know why that is. And also, Emmanuel, the things that they were saying, as far as, he underperformed offensively. Canelo Alvarez was in there with an elite level competitor. He was in there with a guy who had a height and reach advantage on him. He was in there with a guy who was damn near, a heavyweight when he stepped in the ring. So he was in there with a very huge opponent who had height and reach advantage, and he still won clearly. I think that's to be applauded. He's bound to have some trouble. Any fighter would, with all of those things going against him in a fight like that. But yeah, let's keep it going. Swiss Kid 316 says Saul Canelo Alvarez is versus Sergey Deverenchenko. Who do you got, and do you think it's possible to happen? I do think it's possible to happen. Sergey Deverenchenko is an IBF mandatory next, I believe, and so I do think that's very possible. But he is on the other side of the street, on the PBC side. As long as he's willing to cross that street, come to the zone, and make the fight happen, I'm sure Canelo Alvarez would be more than happy to oblige him. But once again, this is part 1 of the Q&A with the IBFP, and you must absolutely share, like, and subscribe.